YouTube sucks, but you don't need me to tell you that. But here's the thing. It's also theoretically one of the greatest creations in the history of man. Since the dawn of the motion picture, it had always been an inherently exclusionary thing. Only a small handful of people had ever been able to truly have their visions come to life. And even many of those who did had their vision tainted by outside factors, putting it through the ringer until it resembled the original vision like my ass resembles the dark side of Mars. I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. Consumer-grade videography has gradually become more and more accessible since the 60s or 70s up to the modern day, where you'll be hard-pressed to not find a standard video camera or smartphone that can capture videos in 4K. And that's only going to continue to get better. Consumer-grade video capturing equipment being good enough is no longer an issue, but distribution was still an issue for a very long time, even as the means to capture it became better. That is until YouTube came along. YouTube is completely free to use for anyone, so now those hurdles are no longer present. So all you need is passion and a vision, and you can within reason create whatever video content you want and broadcast it to the world without having to deal with the bureaucratical red tape that had restricted so many passionate creators in the past. But being free and open to use for anyone has its own issues. Allowing anybody to upload content means that naturally you're gonna get less than pleasant company at times, and since it's going to be an expensive thing to upkeep, you don't want anything that will alienate potential sponsors, as that's really the only way you're gonna keep the systems afloat. This is not an unreasonable expectation. Anything that involves any sort of isms or phobias and whatnot will be restricted, if not for the reasons of wanting to be inclusive, at least for the reasons of wanting high-paying sponsors to run ads on your site. Rules of conduct are what you signed up for when you agreed to the terms of service. But I remember hearing back in 2009 that there was upwards of 20 hours of content being uploaded to YouTube every minute. And that was back in 2009. These days, it's upwards of 500 hours. So there's no earthly way you could possibly vet that much content. You would need thousands of people working around the clock, so you're naturally going to end up relying on bots and algorithms to fill in the blanks, so to speak. Which is entirely reasonable, but the problem with bots and algorithms is that they work on an objective level but can't possibly account for nuance. Which means there are certain things you just can't talk about under any circumstance, even if it's the most nuanced topic in the world. For example, the scene at the end of God of War 1, a scene that has gotten me in trouble multiple times. To me, this is an incredibly important scene that deserves to be talked about at length, because it's an incredibly powerful scene that showcases the results of the events of the entire game leading up to this point, but it's also a scene that is the linchpin of the entire rest of the original God of War trilogy, and arguably the entire series. Why is that? Well, let's go over it one more time. So in the aftermath of denouncing his loyalty to Ares, Kratos goes on a 10-year exodus of indentured servitude to the other gods in order to pay back the debt for all the horrible things he did, so that they will flush his mind of the terrible things he's done, and bring him peace. He then fulfills one last favor to the gods, killing the mad god Ares. Unfortunately, the other gods never actually promised to have Kratos' memories wiped, only forgiveness. But what is forgiveness to a man who has to live with everything he's done? Dude has PTSD, let's not mince words. He feels that he's been betrayed and abandoned by the gods, and he has nothing, left alone and unwanted in a world that hates and fears him. So he climbs to the highest peak in all of Greece and does what he does. He had the entire climb to dwell on his life, consider all the things he's done, and perhaps not go through with what he's about to go through with. But he still does what he does, only to be yanked back to reality without his consent because the gods decided that he's gonna be the new god of war. This is the scene that directly leads to Kratos becoming hostile towards the gods for screwing him over in the worst ways, fueling a resentment that would lead him to become an even worse god of war than Ares. Which, combined with Zeus's paranoia of Kratos betraying him, as well as corruption by Pandora's box, leads Zeus to kill Kratos, thereby setting the stage for him taking apart Olympus brick by brick. It's funny because usually death is the end of someone's life. The entire rest of the series would not have been able to take place as it did if not for this scene. It's also the scene which has spawned an entire genre of memes out of nowhere, which I find incredibly hilarious. My favorite one being the Portal one, although I don't know why the internet collectively decided that the theme song to this meme was Dream On by Aerosmith. Regardless, the best memes are the ones that are able to juxtapose funny ideas with a serious piece of media, and therefore are able to completely recontextualize something. But unfortunately, YouTube has decided I can't talk about any of this. I've had multiple of my videos restricted and flagged for adult content because of this scene, because despite taking place within a fictional media and having mountains of story-based context that makes it clear that this is a piece of a larger story, it is not in any way a depiction of anything in real life and not anything that could harm someone. Showing or discussing this scene is, in their eyes, a depiction of, well, how do I say this without them picking it up? Of course, the phonetic alphabet. This scene, in their eyes, is a depiction of Sierra Echo Lima Foxtrot, pause, Hotel Alpha Romeo Mike. I can't even say where this scene takes place because the name of this location has that one word that sounds like sumo slide. As a matter of fact, if you search for this meme on YouTube, the very first result has this warning. The same warning that my videos have been flagged with on multiple occasions, which is funny because removed from the context of the game, who's to say that this isn't just the depiction of someone cliff diving? Would I get the same flag if I wanted to do a video on cliff diving? Because that's how arbitrary this whole thing is becoming at this point. That's how broken these bots are. It doesn't work within context, and it doesn't work out of context. So let me get this straight. I can't discuss the most important scene in the history of the God of War series with the possible exception of the multiple part scene where Kratos has the ashes of his wife and daughter grafted to his skin, because in the eyes of these bots, I might as well be depicting myself doing what Kratos is doing. Context doesn't matter. Nuance doesn't matter. Nothing matters except for the content that's being shown purely taken in a vacuum. And that's the issue of using bots in place of actual people. A person could see this and recognize the nuance of the topic, how it plays into the story in question, and the fact that it's a discussion of a real-world thing within the context of a fictional work, and therefore it's not a discussion of the act itself, but rather a discussion of the act when taking into account the context of the game. You know, the thing you do when analyzing a story. And that's why YouTube, despite being technically one of the most important creations in the history of the world, is also one of the most creator-hostile environments to exist in. You can't say certain things, you can't do certain things, you can't even suggest certain things, no matter what the context. It constantly feels like I'm swimming upstream in this case because there are certain topics that are kind of inseparable from pieces of media. I can't talk about God of War without talking about violence, and there are certain scenes that are kind of inseparable from the pieces of media as well. This scene is inseparable from the series, but I can't talk about this scene without talking about sumo slide. And what stings even more is in recent years, YouTube has cracked down on content made for kids. If your content is specifically targeted at kids, you face much of the same issues than if your content is flagged for adult content. So what you're telling me is, you can't be targeting your videos at kids, but you also can't be targeting your videos at adults. I'm reminded of that one scene from Spider-Man Homecoming.
Don't do anything I would do, and definitely don't do anything I wouldn't do. There's a little gray area in there, and that's where you operate.
I like to generally keep my content at a healthy PG-13, but I don't think this is an extremely 18+ conversation. It's no less 18+ than the hundreds upon hundreds of videos I've seen that depict worse content but are not marked for adults. Now, let me explain what happens when a video gets flagged for adult content. It's essentially dead in the water at that point, because if your video is marked for adults only, YouTube won't recommend it to people, it won't show up in search results, and it'll be demonetized, essentially giving the video the killing blow. And to someone at my size, that can be quite harrowing. Of course, getting hit with any sort of flag sucks, but the worst part is when you're hit with the unspecific adult content flag. When this happens, they don't even let you know what part of the video is the offending part of the video, or what is specifically adult about the video. They leave that up to you to decide. At least when it's a flag specifically marked as something like Sierra, Echo, Lima, Foxtrot, etc., you can go through the video and find specific examples, so at least you could cut them and hopefully have your appeal succeed, which is thankfully what's happened to me in one example where the appeal succeeded. So I only have to my own video to appease the giant idiot who doesn't understand the nuance of the subject. But there are other cases where they simply refer to your content as adult content. No specific reasons, no specific moments, your content is marked for adults, go f yourself. This could very well be an easy thing to fix if you know any specific moments that you can point to in your video, but other times it's not so obvious. When How Old God of War Enhances New God of War got hit with the dreaded adult content label, I didn't know what the hell specific moments they were pointing to, if any. All I know is that video is significantly less violent than some of my other God of War videos, and sometimes cutting the content doesn't necessarily work. And the thing that bites the most is that you only get one chance to appeal your content, and it never works. Of all the videos I've had to appeal, every single one of them came back with YouTube telling me to blow a goat. They make it a point to mention that these appeal processes could take up to 48 hours, but every single one of them came back within an hour, some within 10 minutes, making me think that not a single check was actually made. The idea of appealing your content is that it's supposed to be looked over by an actual human, but there's no possible way that could actually happen that quickly. Unless, once again, they have thousands of people working around the clock, which they definitely don't. I personally believe that the appeal process is ran by a second, less scrutinous bot, but one that still has all the same flaws as the original flagging bot does. So it's almost pointless to appeal your videos. The only way that I've gotten results is by going straight to YouTube's social medias, because those accounts are ran by actual human beings, presumably, that can actually escalate your cases to be looked at by actual human beings. And that's the point in which reasonable scrutiny becomes unreasonable hostility. In the one case where I actually had my appeal succeed, after days of waiting, they finally realized, oh yeah, our accusations of what this video's subject matter contains is complete and total crap, and reversed the decision. But once again, that only happened to one of my videos. The others were still rejected. 2 for the reasons discussed here. And here's what's funny. They consider the discussion of Sierra, Echo, Lima, Foxtrot, etc. the same as actually performing said topic, which means if they consider your video in any way related to that topic, they will send you an email as if you are someone in desperate need of help. And when you appeal and have your appeal rejected, as you inevitably will, they send you the same email twice. Which, when I know that the claims about my video's content is absolute BS to begin with, comes across as A, condescending, and B, rubbing salt in the wound. You don't care about me, you're just an automated message. So let's just go over this one more time. If your video is tipped off for adult content by the bots for whatever reason, sometimes they don't even let you know what exactly it is that caused the flag to go off. So in many cases, you don't even know what the hell happened. Then you have one chance, and only one chance, to appeal your video even if you don't know what specific thing you're appealing for. But that appeal will never work, so you have to just go and make a big stink about it. I need a better phrase than creator hostile, because that is absolutely unacceptable. Because these are livelihoods at stake, channels that have spent years building their following. It would be like going into work one day and suddenly your work building ceased to exist overnight, and the front gate guard, who's a T-1000, tells you it's all your fault but won't tell you why. And hearing this, you may think that simply being demonetized isn't an issue anymore. Well, let me just tell you, that's not true. Because I had the re-upload of my Athena video, thankfully not marked for adults, but demonetized, 3 days after it was out. So much better. For demonetization, they actually do give you feedback. They told me I swore within the first 15 seconds. No, I did not. I didn't even speak for about the first 13 seconds. Then they also told me I had graphic game violence in the first 15 seconds. Once again, that's not true. My intro takes up about the first 8 seconds, and then the next 7 seconds are taken up by killing an enemy in a small chunk of the screen. There's blood, but it's by no means gratuitous. There are scenes in God of War that are way more gratuitous than that. I managed to get this one sorted out, but it still took more than a day. If I know that I'm in the wrong, I can take the L. But it kills morale knowing that I'm in the right, but I'm still being punished. As a matter of fact, despite the major topic here being videos marked for adult content, demonetization is arguably even more of an issue these days because it's much easier to be demonetized. You see, they let you tell them what type of content that your video has. Unfortunately, if your assessment of the content does not match up with what they think it has, your entire channel is suddenly held to increased scrutiny because your assessment of your content is no longer considered reliable. Which really is just kicking you when you're down, especially when their assessment of your content isn't true, such as swearing within the first 15 seconds when you clearly did not. But if you appeal and they decide, actually no, you did swear within the first 15 seconds, even if you didn't, suddenly it falls on you. You are punished for their mistakes. Do you have any idea how demoralizing that is? And I know there's going to be people telling me that these people should just quote-unquote find a real job, and I say that that's just arbitrary pettiness towards something that's no less legitimate than any other job. And the solution to a problem is not to pretend the problem doesn't exist just because of arbitrary pettiness. I don't have any specific solutions, but there must be a better way to handle this than what they currently have. Something that pleases the sponsors but also doesn't screw over the very foundation of this website. There's a revenue split, you know. YouTube is missing out on money as well. And surely they should be focused on not screwing over their own earnings. None of this is unique to me either. This is becoming a recurring issue from what I'm seeing as well. My pal Jay's Reviews had to heavily censor his video on Resident Evil 0, despite the fact that that game had no more or less graphic imagery than the games that came before or after it. Dubus Goobus had one of his videos flagged twice for graphic content that was not present in the video. It had to be appealed by people on the social media both times, and both times it took over a day to process. But the one that baffles me the most is when my good chum, the 50-foot Atlantean King, King K, had one of his Pokemon videos flagged for adult content. Pokemon. Fucking Pokemon. If that's being marked for adult content, your bots badly need to be rebooted. I know there's probably going to be a lot of people out there who are going to get mad at me for complaining for whatever reason, because people on this platform don't deserve to air their grievances for whatever reason. But let me just throw a feeler out there. If you work a 9-to-5 job, you're expected to get paid. If you don't, you can sue for lost wages. But as I've shown today, this is a type of work where your means to make a living can be demonstrably arbitrarily yanked away. But you simply just can't do anything about it other than making noise. So what's the point of this video? Well, I wanted to take this opportunity to vent some frustrations in a slightly tongue-in-cheek way, while also making you all aware of a very real problem. If you happen to see my content taking a different direction in the future, it's not because I wanted to, it's because I actually want people to be able to watch my content. As far as I'm concerned, there ain't nothing selfish with somebody wanting their work to be seen by as much of an audience as they believe the content deserves to be seen by. Especially when any sort of restriction is as arbitrary and ill-defined as the restrictions that me and a hell of a lot of people are facing right now. YouTube, you should be doing better than this, because when we succeed, you succeed. And I sure as hell am not gonna stop talking about God of War. So I hope you enjoyed, or at least tolerated, this little rant of mine, and if you enjoy what I do, be sure to like this video, comment telling me what you think, and subscribe while also hitting the notification icon at the same time so you can always be up to date on what I'm doing. Plus, you can also donate to my Patreon and support the channel financially so you can get various perks and rewards including exclusive content, early access, exclusive Discord benefits, and more, like these people here. And a special thank you to users Inutsu, FarmCat84, and GAW004 for going above and beyond. I've been the King of Snark Style, and I will see you next time. Peace.